Hi, welcome. Eric Simpson here, an online weight loss specialist working with busy professional women over 40 who are looking to lose weight, tone up without having to count calories, spend hours exercising every day, or trying to be 100% perfect. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to avoid 5 weight loss focus traps that people get caught up in when it comes to losing weight. So let's dive straight into number one. Number one is meal planning complacency. And what do I mean by that? Well, when people start off on weight loss, they are quite diligent with what they're eating, when they're eating, and what kind of foods they're eating, basically. But then complacency creeps in. The focus shifts more towards the other types of food they used to eat, rather than staying focused on the types of foods that they need to eat. So that's number one, meal planning complacency. Stick to the plan. Number two, exercise complacency. Again, people get into a nice little rhythm of maybe going for their walks, or maybe doing some workout at home, or going to the local gym, whatever it might be. But then guess what? Suddenly other things start to creep in. They start to shift the focus, looking at other things that need to be done on their daily calendar, weekly calendar, and there's a complacency towards planning in your exercise. So again, the way to avoid that is keep planning it in your diary so it gets done. Once it's in your diary, there's every likelihood you're going to follow through on it. Number three, not shifting to inspiration. What do I mean by this one? Well, on screen there you can see a client of mine. Her name's Katie. She lost over 42 pounds. And what I mean by not shifting to inspiration is this. When people start off on weight loss, typically they're starting off in a slight state of desperation. They want to get away from where they are. And you may well be in that same situation. You desperately don't like the way you look, feel, and how your clothes feel, and you want to get away from that. Well, there comes a point on the weight loss journey where you're that far away from that feeling that first sort of kicked you off in the right direction, that desperation feeling, that it no longer has any influence on you. And that's when people go into what I call la-la land, and they start going back to where they started from. So there has to come a point where you go from desperation to not feeling desperate to then shifting to inspiration. And in Katie's case, she got down to down to the weight she wanted to get down to, and then she took it to a whole new level and actually became a fitness model. That was never our intention when we started working together, and I would say for 99.9% of the people I work with, they're never going to want to or try and attempt to achieve this level of fitness. But the point I'm making is, at some point you have to shift from desperation to inspiration in order to keep you moving forwards. Otherwise you run the risk of falling back into old habits. Number four, old thinking goes unchallenged. What do I mean by that? Well, when you start off on weight loss, your thinking is quite positive and you're focused on the right things. And then guess what? Not suddenly, it kind of creeps in actually. Old thinking starts to creep back into your head. You start then focusing on the things that weren't going right before, your emotions, how you ate, lack of activity, and you start thinking that way. And then you start thinking about, well, I've never done this before. You start thinking, I've failed so many times before, I've made a mistake with this new process that I'm trying. So old thinking going unchallenged. You need to continually be vigilant about how you're thinking. And number five, shiny diet object syndrome, looking for the next new diet. And interestingly enough, I'm just going to go back to Katie here. What was interesting about Katie was she achieved a great deal of success, and I think you'll agree, she got herself into great shape. She did 2 competitions. One was Miss Galaxy, Miss Universe, where she placed 3rd in that competition, beating women who were 10 years her junior. She was 47 at the time of this photograph, and she did a second competition. And what was interesting was, she went into the second competition thinking that she wasn't good enough in terms of diet-wise to do well in the second competition. So she started looking at other things. And it was interesting to me to see that somebody had been so successful still had elements of shiny diet object syndrome, looking at other things. So I had to sort of rein her back in and say, look, you've done incredibly well. Look at what you've achieved already. You're eating very well. We don't need to go looking for anything else. And we didn't. And she went on, did another competition and did well in that also. So trying to avoid the shiny diet object syndrome, looking for the next magic bullet. There ain't no magic bullet, there really isn't. There are good eating principles that can be adapted to your situation. And when you stick with those principles, you will be highly successful. And more importantly, you'll understand how to maintain it long term. So let's just recap what those 5 things are. Meal planning complacency. Keep your meal planning up to speed. Plan ahead, whether that means planning online, writing out a list, whatever it is. Don't fall into meal planning complacency, because it's insidious. It happens over a period of time, and before you know it, you're all the way back to not having one glass of wine on the weekend or a few glasses on the weekend. You're having them every single night. So be very, very cautious of that one. Exercise planning complacency. Suddenly you find that everything else is more important than getting out for that walk. You've got to keep it as a priority. Shift into inspiration. So once you've lost a significant amount of weight, you then need to move gears and start going beyond what you think you wanted to achieve originally, just to keep yourself moving emotionally. Otherwise, you run the risk of falling back into number 4, old thinking going unchallenged, and you end up sliding back to where you started from. And number 5, the shiny diet object syndrome, thinking that what you're doing isn't effective and then going looking for this new magic bullet, this new diet that some celebrities promoted that's helped them to lose 3, 4, 5 stone. I can tell you now, there ain't no magic shiny diet object thing out there. It's just good eating principles that you adapt to your situation and you're consistent with it. So there you have it, how to avoid those 5 weight loss diet focus traps. If you do that, you'll become incredibly successful in a relatively short period of time. As ever, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them below. And if you'd like to discuss your own weight loss situation with me, there'll be a link in the description below where you can book a free, no obligation call with me. So until next time, take very good care and bye for now.